Weekly Shred, Thursday night. Welcome aboard. My name is Jim Schultz. I am your host over here at the F Cubed headquarters. And thank you guys for being here, man. I am so humbled that you guys choose to spend your time with me, whether it be, live or whether it be on the replay. Either way, man, I'm super, super humbled. And so tonight, we're going to talk about, is sugar addicting? And so I want to know where you guys stand on this, right? So right out of the gates, man, let me know. You're watching on Twitter, you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, wherever you happen to be accessing this, let me know in the comments, in the chat section, whatever. What do you guys think? Before we get into the content tonight, before I kind of share my thoughts and we dig into the research a little bit and we kind of, tiptoe around this issue, gently so, what do you guys think? Is sugar addicting or is it not addicting? Do you think that this is like on par with, and I'm not even like, I'm not even going too far with this. Some people feel like it's on par with like heroin, feel like it's on par with like cocaine, feel like it's on par with some things that are, some things that are really, really like super duper addicting. And so, what do you guys think, man? Is sugar up there with those guys? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. I think I have the chat feature pulled up again. We'll find out here in a couple of seconds. But yeah. So is sugar addicting? So I think this is going to be good. Before we get into it tonight, though, another quick little CTA for you guys. If you guys are brand new, thank you, man. Enjoy the show. I really hope you get some value from tonight. If you guys have been watching for a while, if you want to do me a huge solid and share this wherever you happen to be watching it, whether it's a retweet, a share on Facebook, or share on YouTube, that would really, really help me out a ton. So, all right. So is sugar addicting? What does the research have to say, and does it even matter? So, that's what I'm saying. So, Tasty Trader, what's going on? She says yes is her answer. So, Tasty Trader says yes, sugar is addicting. So, that's kind of interesting. That is absolutely interesting. So, let me know. You guys are watching. You guys are tuning in. I'm seeing, people popping in right now, kind of checking it out. I want to know, what do you think? Do you think sugar is addicting? So, does it even matter? That's what I really want to answer tonight, right? And we're going to dive into this for the next 20-25 minutes, but I think that's the more important question. And, I'm obviously going to make a case for why I feel that way, but it's like, whether or not sugar is addicting, I suppose is an important question, especially when you get into, like, serious addiction issues. Like, I'm certainly not trying to downplay addiction issues at all. I mean, to be perfectly frank with you all, it's something I have struggled with in my own life. Not with sugar per se, but in other areas of my life, absolutely. And so I know this terrain well. I know it personally. But when it comes to sugar specifically, I actually think that the second question, right, does it even matter, is far more relevant than the first question. And hopefully you guys will give me the next 15 to 20 minutes to kind of make my case. So here's what we're going to start with. So we're going to start with the man, the myth, the legend, my man Lane Norton. So if you've been a follower of the Shred or really any of my content, I'm a huge fan of Lane Norton. Well, here's what he's had to say, and then we'll kind of unpack this in some detail. Sucrose, sugar, alone has not been shown to fit the parameters of addiction. But sugar, when combined with salt, fat, and processing, might. So, all right, so there's a lot going on there, right? So let's kind of unpack this. The first thing I want to say is this. Whenever I am trying to get better, whenever I am trying to better understand the terrain of, physique transformation, physique development, I like to turn to people that are further along the road than I am, people that I look up to, and also people that are literally scientists in the area. Lane Norton being one of those. His PhD is in nutritional sciences. So, asking him a question like this, right in his wheelhouse. Asking him a question like this, he's going to have a lot more to say on the subject than a lot of other people, myself included, right? And so when it comes to, understanding nutrition, like I would like to think I understand nutrition kind of from a street smarts type of sense, right? Having been a competitive bodybuilder for so long, and I've tried to educate myself along the way, but I don't have nearly the education, the expertise, and just the pure sheer experience that these guys, Lane Norton Eric Helms, Eric Trexler, John Berardi. I mean, these guys are like legitimate PhD scientists. This is what they do, right? Like they punch the clock at 9 a.m., they punch out at 5 o'clock. That whole time, they've been studying sugar, right? That whole time, they've been studying ketosis or whatever the case may be, right? And so that's why I like to lean on these experts in the field when, sharing and disseminating information with you guys. Now, I'm going to, of course, add offer my insights and kind of give you guys my little tweak on it, my little spin on it, and, feel free to reject or accept whatever you want to. But that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing that I want to say here is, man, I think that to suggest that sugar, whether it's addicting, so let's say that you don't think sugar is addicting, right? Like, for example, like based on this quote, right? Sucrose alone, just pure sugar, has not been shown, has not been researched. The evidence does not support it being labeled as an addictive substance. Well, now we're going to unpack that a little bit with the second half of the quote and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, man, like when I think about this, and also I think about the question of does it even matter? I think it's really, really overly simplistic to try to just say sugar is addicting, yes, or sugar is addicting, no, and just move on from that, especially if you happen to side on the no aspect of the spectrum. And the reason why is this. Just look around, man, right? Like we as a nation, we as a global society, we're not exactly super fit, right? We're not exactly lean, mean machines. Right? Like a lot of us are overweight. Like a lot of us are borderline obese. Right? And for those of you that know my story, like this is how it all started for me. So I know this really well too. And so I think that to suggest that sugar might not be an issue here, and I'm not saying that Lane is saying that because he's not, right? So I'm not trying to put words in his mouth that he didn't say. But I'm just trying to extrapolate from that quote what I have heard other people say and try to simplify the issue. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's that simple because clearly we have an issue with overconsumption. Right? Clearly, we have an issue with, portion control or, calories in, calories out. I mean, however you want to put it, doesn't matter. Clearly, we have an issue with excess. Well, you know what's a really good way to pile up some excess? Sugar. Right? You know what's a really good way to pack on a ton of calories that your body can't really use? Right? Pack on a ton of food substance, sucrose, that is pretty nutritionally bankrupt, right? Like it's not really going to give your body too many building blocks that it can work from, right? Sugar is going to do that for you. And so I think that that's an important thing to understand here on the front end. Like, yes, research can say sugar is not an addictive substance, right? And we'll come back to my feelings towards research here in a minute. I'm a huge proponent of research, but there are some caution flags I kind of want to throw at you guys here tonight. So sucrose alone has not been shown to fit the parameters of addiction, but sugar, when combined with salt, fat, and processing, might. So to me, that's where the plot thickens tonight, right? So to me, that's where things kind of start to get interesting. And so, yeah, Tasty, we're not exactly lean, mean machines. No, we're not, Tasty Trader. We are not lean, mean machines at all. And so that's exactly what I'm saying. So I think when it comes to sugar, right? Like when you think of like straight pure sucrose, right? What do you think of? This is what pure, straight sucrose actually is. That guy, right there, right? That's a pound of Domino sugar. Now, I don't know about y'all, but on treat day, right? When I'm about to enjoy something pretty delicious, I'm not running to Harris Teeter to clean them out of Domino sugar, right? Like, I'm not running my cart through the aisle just grabbing 6, 8, 10 pounds of straight sugar and going home to mainline that thing for 3 hours. Like, that's not my idea. That's not my idea of a treat day, right? And so that is kind of what Lane's quote was getting at there. And there's a lot of truth to that statement. Sugar alone, nobody's eating sugar by itself, right? Nobody is just straight up, just pounding sugar. Now, what's interesting, and I guess I should have brought this up earlier, but I'm a little all over the map tonight because I'm kind of fired up about this subject. So earlier I said, sugar being compared to like heroin and cocaine and things like that. And some of you might be thinking, Jim, it's kind of a far reach, isn't it? Well, sort of. I've looked at the research a little bit here. I haven't looked at it as much as I've looked at other things in the world of nutrition. So that's why I'm leaning more heavily on people like Lane Norton, Eric Helms, and so on and so forth. Things like keto, things like, things of calories in, calories out, like I've looked at that quite a bit. Sugar, I've looked at it some, but I'm not as well versed on what the evidence has to say. I understand the general conclusions, but I haven't dug into the details of the studies like I have some other things. But there is one study out there, I believe, where it was used on mice. Mice or rats. I mean, basically the same thing, right? My apologies to all the rodent lovers out there. But they put mice in a room and they basically, they gave them the choice between sugar, pure sucrose, and cocaine. And what happened was the mice over time began to opt for the sucrose over cocaine. Right? And so this is where you may have heard before, like, sugar more addictive than cocaine. Like, I mean, if that's not a headline grabber, like, if that's not the epitome of clickbait, I don't know what is, right? Well, there's actually a little bit of truth to that, right? There's at least a couple morsels of truth there because it's pointed back and sourced from this research, right? Well, here's what's interesting about that research, and and again, I haven't looked at the study in all of its glory and in every detail, but when I think about that, I'm like, okay, we've got to be careful, right? We do a lot of research on mice and rats and rodents and stuff like that, and it gives us a lot of insight into how we might behave as humans, right? But we also have to be careful with something like this and making the leap to, assuming that that's going to be the same relationship with humans, with people. And here's at least one reason why. It's certainly not the only reason why, but I think it's a reasonable one. Mice, they don't have feelings. I don't think, right? Maybe they do. They can't reason through situations like we can. They don't understand the future like we do, right? And so feelings or not, right? Again, my apologies to all the rodent lovers out there. If I'm a mouse and I have a choice between sugar, something that is going to give me some nutritional value, like yes, it's pretty nutritionally bankrupt, but if I'm choosing between sugar, something that is going to have a caloric content and is going to fill me up even if only temporarily, and cocaine, something that has no nutritional value, if I'm starving, right? Yeah, it kind of makes sense that I'm going to choose the sugar because I don't want to starve to death, right? And mice, still, they may not be able to reason through the future. They may not be able to understand the consequences of their actions like we can, but they don't want to starve to death. And so I'm thinking, man, for that reason alone, I don't know that we can make the leap to a human trial where we're going to have the same conclusion. And so that's one thing I wanted to bring up about kind of the sugar and the cocaine aspect. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'd love to know in the comments. If you're familiar with that research, if you've heard of it before, if that's the first time you're hearing about it, whatever the case may be. But the point that I'm trying to make right now is, again, going back to my man Domino, nobody's shooting straight sugar, right? Nobody is just pounding straight sucrose. At least I'm not. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm off my rocker. Okay, well, let's level this up one. And let's throw the next iteration at you guys. You might be thinking, all right, Jim, like, I'm not going to pound straight sugar, but I'll tell you what I will do. I'll slam me some pixie sticks, bro. Like, you give me a pack of, multicolored pixie sticks, and it's over, right? Like, I'm going to do this. I am going to straight shoot apple-flavored sucrose for about 4 hours. Like, that's what I'm going to do. That's my idea of a treat day, right? And obviously, there's some sarcasm in my voice right now. Just in case, with internet sarcasm, sometimes you got to lay it out there for people because they're not quite sure. I don't think we're doing this. Right? I don't think anybody's doing this, right? And so this is kind of like the support for that first part of the Lane Norton quote, where it's like, yeah, I don't really think that sugar is a big issue. Sugar by itself, sugar in isolation, right? Again, we're not cleaning Harris Teeter out of Domino sugar. We're not mainlining pixie sticks at home, right? Like, neither one of those things are happening for most people, right? Now, again, you start getting into like some higher level sugar content, like gummy bears and such. Like, it might be a little bit different. But I don't know that that's pure sugar. Like, pixie sticks and sugar are pure sugar. And so I don't really think that this is an issue for a lot of people. Here's where things start to get interesting, though. Here's where the plot has a little bit of a twist. And it's in that second half of the Lane Norton quote, where it's like, It's not sucrose. That's the issue. It's sucrose, or sugar, plus something else. Sugar plus fat. Sugar plus salt. Sugar plus fat and salt and other carbohydrates, right? Sugary carbs, right? That's where the real magic is. That's where the real power and the potency of this potentially addictive substance really lies. And so let's be real with ourselves tonight, people. We're not talking about pixie sticks. We're talking about Oreos, right? We're not talking about mainline and sucrose. We're talking about slamming some cream-filled sandwiches. Like, that's what we're talking about. And especially, you start getting into double stuffed, you start getting into the minty guys, like straight up, like this is where it's at. Like, this is the issue. This is the problem at hand, right? And so this is like the great example of sugar, salt, fat, carbs. The Oreo cookie, right? Cookie on one side, cream in the middle, cookie, more cookie on the other side. And again, this comes in many iterations. Double stuffed, mint, red velvet. I've seen pumpkin pie, of course, October. This is the thing that people are going to Harris Teeter to clean them out. This is the thing that you are going to spend 4 hours on Saturday crushing, right? And so this is where the plot kind of thickens a little bit, because I'm like, this is an issue. It's definitely something I struggle with for basically my entire youth. I mean, that's what led me to, being so overweight and being borderline obese. Yes, I kind of drew the short end of the stick genetically, but I didn't do myself too many favors, right? I mean, I've crushed many, many a sleeve of Oreos in my day. And so when we kind of think about this, I'm like, all right, like Oreo cookies? Like, yeah, there's something there. And, just to even do you guys one better, Oreo cookies, we don't even have to get fancy, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right? We don't have to describe gravitational pull tonight. Let's just go with chocolate cake. Right? Let's just go with straight up chocolate cake. Right? Let's just go with straight up chocolate cake. It can be prepackaged. It can be homemade. It doesn't make a difference. Right? You get yourself a moist, that's M-O-I-S capital T, moist chocolate cake, and you're going to be really, really doing something. Like, you're going to be really, really having a good time. And again, I mean, what is it, right? It's sugar, it's fat, it's carbs, it's salt, it's everything. It's the perfect combination. And for anyone who's made a cake from scratch, you know this, right? I mean, everybody's done this. Whether it's a box cake or not, like, what goes in the recipe? Sugar, a ton of it, right? A little pinch of salt, right? Usually you've got to add a lot more than the recipe calls for, but a little pinch of salt. Butter, there's your fat content, right? And then what else? Flour, there's your other carb content. Right? So when you actually break it down and strip it down to its component parts, it's like, man, it has every layer of deliciousness that can possibly be found, right? This, though, all kidding aside, this is the issue. It's the cake and it's the Oreos. And so, is sugar addicting? Honestly, man, if you guys want my thoughts, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I don't even think it matters, because, I mean, we can come, like, I'll come with my bibliography, you come with your bibliography, and, we can take a look at the research, and we can decide whether or not we want to label sugar as addicting. And this is not to downplay its seriousness, not at all, because I'm going to get into that here in a second. But I think it's just a technicality. Like, do we have a problem with overconsumption? Yes. Do I have a problem with overconsumption more times than I can admit? Absolutely. Right? And is one of the pathways to achieve said overconsumption oftentimes sugar? Yes. Mostly coupled with other things, but yes, sugar plays a big role there. And so I think, does it really matter, man? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Right? Like, we can debate back and forth, and we can just argue back and forth over terminology, but I don't think it gets to the root issue. Here's what I think the root issue is. The root issue is self-awareness. The root issue is I need to understand myself. And I need to understand, all right, what are my limits? What are my boundaries? What are my trigger foods, right? That's a term I like to use a lot, in all of my content, but I use it quite a bit in Full Throttle Fat Loss, with the athletes inside of the course. I'm like, hey, we've got to know, what are your trigger foods? Because is sugar inherently bad? I don't think so. In fact, I'm quite convinced that it's not, right? When you start to put sugar inside of, some parameters or some constraints of total calories, energy intake, and things of that nature, like sugar is perfectly fine, right? Now I know that there are some other, I won't even call them experts. I'll just call them individuals out there that may or may not have a DR in front of their name that believe that sugar is the devil. They believe that sugar is the thing that is preventing you from reaching all of your goals of, the physique that you want. Sugar itself, I don't think is the problem. It's the excess. But sugar could be contributing to the problem if that makes any sense. But I think that we've overly demonized sugar in a destructive and misrepresentative way. And so I don't think it's sugar itself. But, and this is where the self-awareness kicks in, you've got to know yourself, man. Right? Like, take me, for example. Here's a good example that maybe will illustrate my point. I know that there are certain foods that I'm not going to be able to control myself, right? And I'm not talking like totally out of control, like, I'm in a 15,000 calorie bender necessarily, although that has happened before. But I just know that I'm probably not going to be able to maintain and practice moderation with these foods. Greatest example would be my mom's apple cake, right? My mom makes this homemade apple cake. It is, I don't even know how to describe it. Majestic would be the best word I could use to describe this cake. My mom's apple cake, I'm not going to have 100 grams of my mom's apple cake and put it into MyFitnessPal and pretend that I'm going to stick to my diet that day. Like, it's not going to happen, right? Like, if I'm going to have my mom's apple cake, like, I'm going in there and I'm taking that set to failure. And that's the end of the story, right? There is no holding back. There is no reps in reserve. Like, we're taking this thing down to the end, right? And I just know that. And that's not the only food for me. Like, brownies are another one for me. And so I think we need to practice self-awareness, right? Like, where are you at? Like, what are some things that it's like, all right, like, I probably shouldn't have that, right? It doesn't have to be everything. In fact, it shouldn't be everything. But there are going to be certain foods, a few foods, where it's like, okay, if I'm really serious about this, it's probably a good idea for me to put this on the shelf for right now. It's probably a good idea for me to not, entertain introducing this food into my feeding schedule right now, right? Let me put it on the shelf for a little while. It doesn't mean it has to be forever, but just for a little while I'm building up some momentum, while I'm getting my feet wet, while I'm finding a rhythm, however you want to put it, right? I think we've all got 2, 3, 5 foods where it's like, okay, I probably shouldn't have those. The important thing to remember, though, is that list of foods is not every tasty food. That list of foods is not every single food that you enjoy. Because I think if you start, eliminating those and refraining from those across the board, right, while you're dieting, I really don't think it's going to be sustainable on the other side. For all the reasons I've talked about before, and I don't want to talk about that now because we're already pretty much at time, and we'll go to 9:30 easy if we go down that rabbit hole. So maybe we'll talk about that next week. But sugar itself, man, just use some self-awareness. Is it addicting? Is it not addicting? I don't know. I don't think it matters. I really, truly don't think it matters. And so if you yourself really struggle with sugary foods, then you probably shouldn't eat too many sugary foods. But if you yourself find that, hey, having a Snickers bar, in the middle of the week really helps me, it gives me something to look forward to, and I can control myself, then you should do that. If Snickers bar is one of your trigger foods, then don't do that. Find another food that kind of quenches that sugary, quench, thirst, hunger, however it's probably all the above, right? Find it and eat that food instead, but don't feel like you have to avoid sugar just altogether. So here's some action items, man. Sugar is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine, right? When you start to bring in the constraints of total calories, energy intake, there's absolutely nothing wrong with sugar. In fact, if you guys haven't, I haven't talked about this in a while, but this is kind of my go-to when it comes to sugar. Have you guys heard of the Twinkie diet? So Google this tonight, and let me know in the comments as we're kind of signing off here tonight. Have you guys heard of the Twinkie diet before? So a nutrition professor at a university wanted to prove something to his students and to the public at large. And so he actually went on a Twinkie diet for I think it was 3 or 4 months, right? And all he ate was Twinkies and Ho-Hos and, Oreos, obviously, right? That's all he ate, for 3 months. And he got shredded, right? Like, relatively speaking, right? Like, it wasn't bodybuilding stage lean, but my man lost a ton of weight. His BMI improved, his cholesterol improved, his body fat percentage dropped significantly. Like, it was crazy, right? And all he ate was Twinkies, right? And so the point he was trying to make was not that you should just eat Twinkies. But the point that he was trying to make is that when you're in a caloric deficit, or when you have calories controlled, you don't always have to be in a deficit, right? You can be at maintenance, you can be in a slight surplus, right? There's a different season for everything. He was just trying to make the point that sugar itself is not the issue. And so I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. So you can Google the Twinkie diet. I didn't just make that up. Like, it's a legitimate thing that has been studied. Sugar's perfectly fine, even when, and especially when, you are preparing for something serious, right? Like, you are really dieting hard. I actually think that sugar needs to be a regular part of what you do. Now, again, I'm not talking about mainline and domino. I'm talking about sugar in conjunction with a few other things like salt, fat, carbs, whatever. But you have to exercise self-awareness. So this is not easy. This is not easy at all, right? You're going to have to kind of walk a fine line. You're going to have to kind of, figure out, where you might be. And so it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And so I really think that this is really important. And right now I'm just now popping into the YouTube chats. I kind of forgot about you guys. My apologies. And so Dr. Zaya, sometimes I have craving for carbs and I reach for a beer. Yeah, or probably when you reach for a beer, or when you have a craving for a beer, you reach for some carbs. Strong Mom, yes, but now that I'm not dieting, I don't crave sugar as much. It's interesting that you say that. Strong Mom, because I actually find the same thing. So just to kind of focus on that, this is one of the comments that's over there in the YouTube chat, and so hopefully sometime in the future I'm going to be able to combine all the chat comments together and get them all in one spot so you guys can always see them. But we're a little ways away from that, but hopefully soon. But anyway, that's a great point, Strong Mom. I really love that. I actually find myself, so to give you guys a little insight into kind of when I'm dieting, like really serious, like right now I'm kind of cleaning some things up, but I'm not in like competition prep or anything like that. Just trying to keep the quarantine bulk at bay a little bit. I do find that when I eliminate most sugar, not all, but most, 85 to 90%, I don't really crave it as much. When I'm kind of in an off season, or even like now when I'm in sort of a cleanup phase, having that little bit of sugar on a regular basis, like daily or every other day or whatever, can sometimes be destructive for me, right? Now, some of you might be out there listening to that and you're like, Jim, that kind of contradicts what you just said a couple of minutes ago. And it sort of does. But it also falls in line with I've exercised self-awareness on myself. Like, I know where I'm at on the spectrum. But, my description of my experience is not a prescription or prescription. I'm not sure which one it is, and I probably should know that. It's not a something scription for your life, right? It's just, we just need to be aware of how we are as a person, how we are as a human, and what is going to operate best for us based on, the trial, the error, the experience that we've gone through. So Strong Mom, that's a really, really, really great point. And then Dr. Zaya says, I love salty foods and beer more than sweets. A lot of people are like that, man. Autumn's really like that in a big way. I'm probably more sweet than salty, but obviously the correct answer is sweet and salty. And so, like popcorn, and then he's making popcorn right now. We appreciate that, man. That really makes it a little harder for the rest of us. And so, so let's see. Tasty Trader, Rodent Lovers. Yeah, Rodent Lovers, man. It's good. Oh, so Tasty Trader is exercising right now. So that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So James says, appreciate the advice. We'll have to watch the replay on YouTube. Dude, please do. Yeah, YouTube, you'll get the best quality on YouTube. The Twitter quality, I like to get it out to my tweets, just because I can, so why not do that? That may change sometime in the future, but right now, I like to get it out to my tweets. But the quality of the video should be the highest on YouTube, because YouTube supports the HD stream and the HD quality, whereas Twitter and Facebook don't always support that. And so, John, what do you think of high fructose corn syrup? Hey, John, that's a great question. So this is actually another thing that's been studied, and I'm just going to be perfectly transparent with you. My understanding and knowledge of, so I don't know if you caught the earlier part of the show, but I kind of talked a little bit about, like I try to stay pretty abreast of the research when it comes to training, nutrition, because, this is a huge part of my life, right? Like it's 50-50 between, fitness and finance. It's 100% Jesus. And then inside of that it's 50% finance and 50%, fitness. On the fitness side, I try to stay really abreast of the situation, right? Of what's out there, the evidence and whatnot. There are certain things I'm not as well versed on, and sugar is actually one of them. I know the sugar landscape a little bit. I know the high fructose corn syrup landscape less than that. But I do know this. Some of the people that I respect, Lane Norton being one of them, but actually a handful of people like Eric Trexler and some of the other guys that I really, really, really respect in this field, they all have basically come to the consensus that high fructose corn syrup is also perfectly fine. Which, that's going to rustle some jimmies, right? Like, that's going to twist up everybody's knickers. Because they've heard from the media for years, for decades, that, HFCS is like, man, this stuff is like the devil, right? But again, when we put it within context, right? Again, calories controlled for, we understand deficit maintenance, slight surplus, whatever. It's like, man, it appears to be perfectly fine. Right? Now, again, I wish I had a little bit more for you, man. That's such a good question. But I'm not going to BS you, right? I'm not going to BS you just because I'm not, man enough to say I don't know. I don't really know. But leaning on some of the things I've heard from some people that are a lot more well-versed at this than I am, it does not appear to be a problem. So, really, really good question, man. I really appreciate that. So even when, and especially when you are getting super lean, but again, Mama Schultz's apple cake, right? You guys kind of already saw this. It was already on the slides. I want to figure out a way to bring in the bullet points as I say them so we can keep the drama built up, keep it really high. I think that's important. But Mama Schultz's apple cake, I got no chance, right? It's game over, right? It's checkmate. Like, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to win that battle. So I don't even play, right? I don't even fight it. And so I think, again, it's the main takeaways tonight, is sugar addicting? Maybe, maybe not. If you think it is, okay. If you don't think it is, okay. I'm honestly not really sure. Because, again, I think sugar itself, maybe not, but that's not what anybody cares about. People don't care about straight sugar, right? People don't care about bags of Domino. They care about the other stuff that we talked about. So is there addicting? I don't know. I think it could be. I also think it couldn't be. But I think more important than that is your own self-awareness about your situation. That's what you really need to think about. And I really think that, spend some time doing some introspection. And if, doing a full cleanse from sugar, makes sense to you, then go for it. I honestly think for most people, one final thought, and I'll let you guys go tonight because we're way over time. But this is good, man. Getting these chats in here, this is way better because it's way more interactive, which is what I want out of this ultimately. So I appreciate all the comments. I don't know if I was able to get to every single one of them, but I do really, really appreciate you guys. I really think that, if you do a full cleanse, like a detox, right, which I can't stand that word. If you do like a full cleanse, right, and you eliminate sugar from your diet completely, I think it can be highly, highly effective for the time that you are dieting. I have no problems with that whatsoever. No argument for me. The problem that I have is, what are you going to do after, right? What are you going to do when you reach the finish line? And let's assume you reach the finish line, which, let's be honest, that doesn't usually happen for a lot of people. But if you reach the finish line, now what happens? Are you going to not eat sugar for the rest of your life? That's almost literally impossible. Especially when you actually think about, we've talked about sugar like, bags of Domino, Pixie Sticks, whatever. Sugar really is just carbohydrates. When you look at how it's converted in your body into glucose and what have you, right? So it's like, really, it's all kind of sugar, right? What are you going to do on the other side of this? But just flipping back into like the actual, the practical definition of sugar that we're using tonight, right? Pixie Sticks, Oreos, that kind of stuff. I think you're going to have a real devil of a time on the other side of having reached your goal. And that's what I'm concerned about, right? I want to spend, I like to spend, I try to spend as much time as I can focused on the diet after the diet, right? I want to focus on, hey, what are you going to do when you reach your target phase, right? I spend a ton of time on this with the athletes inside of Full Throttle because it's so important. Because I'm like, man, anybody can get you to your goal, right? Well, maybe not anybody, but most people can get you to your goal. But what do you do after that? What are you planning for when you reach your goal? How are you going to transition back into normal life, whatever normal life looks like for you, right? You got to have a plan. And I think if you do a cleanse or a detox or something that's completely sugar-free, I think you're in for a rough patch on the other side. And I actually say that speaking from personal experience. That's not just, some theoretical construct for me. Like I did that a lot early on in my bodybuilding career, where I would really be super super duper strict for a long period of time, and then once the lights were off and the doors were closed and the show was over, like it was over. And so yeah. So hopefully that gave you guys a little something to think about tonight. And so yeah. So man, you guys are amazing. Like super. If you're still watching now, like you are super duper amazing. If you want to hit me with a like, that would help a ton. If you want to share this, that would also help a ton. If you want to mosey on down to the description and scoop up some free swag or check out some more content, there's links down there. You can give all that a look. It's all completely free, except for Full Throttle, which is very much not free. So you could also check that out. And I don't know, man. This was pretty good. I had fun tonight. I hope you guys had a little bit of fun and got a little bit of something from this. And we'll see you guys next Thursday for another weekly